This is the Loaded Radio Podcast.
All right, hey, it's Scott Penfold, and this is another special edition of the Loaded Radio Podcast, another double shot, a twofer, if you would, as this week I'm going to be joined by Ken Mode frontman Jesse Matthewson, as Ken Mode have the new album out now called Null. It dropped on September 23rd via Artoffact Records, and they've got the follow-up to that album. It's really sort of a double album, but released in two different parts, which is going to be coming out next year. So we're going to be talking to Jesse about that noisy as hell new album from Ken Mode. And then on the second portion of the podcast this week, I'll be sitting down with Zack Simmons, drummer for GOATWHORE, as GOATWHORE have the new album Angels Hung from the Arches of Heaven, which is going to be dropping on October 7th via Metal Blade Records, an album that is just 47 minutes of pure unadulterated death, black thrash, and classic metal, delivered with the intensity that only GOATWHORE can, man. So we're not going to waste any more time. We're going to get down to it. First off, being joined by the frontman for the band Ken Mode, some serious Canadian noise rock, with the new album Null that was recorded and produced by Andrew Schneider in a rather dark and personal project, courtesy of vocalist and guitarist Jesse Matthewson. He joins us now. Jesse, how you doing, man? Thanks for joining us on the Load Radio Podcast this week.
There we go. How you doing, man?
Good, man. How are things with you?
Oh, I guess I shouldn't complain. A bit of a rainy day here in Winnipeg. Yeah, poor Canada. We're all so sad.
I know, right? I know. But I do want to get into the new album, man. First off, Null, of course, dropping September the 23rd. You're first with Artoffact. Who produced the new album, Jesse?
We worked with a fellow named Andrew Schneider for the second time. He's out of Brooklyn, New York. He's worked with, a ton of different bands, but everything from Converge, Cave In, Unsane, Cult of Luna, the Blue Man Group,
Wow.
You name it. He's at least done a whole lot of very interesting, noisy music over the years. But we worked with him on our last record, and we fell in love with the guy. So we decided we'd break the curse that he joked about from the moment he showed up in Winnipeg on the first record he did with us, that he noticed that we're producer hoppers.
Gotcha. Now, you had mentioned in previous talks that this is actually the first part of a 2-album arc. Now, what was the decision to do this, and when does part 2 actually drop?
Part 2 should drop next year. We decided to break them into 2 distinct albums. For the main reason was honestly just I don't feel like anyone needs a 75-minute record from us.
Gotcha.
And the straight facts of the way people consume music these days, usually only the first half of a record gets noticed anyway.
Right.
I've noticed the stats. If we wanted to put out a double record and have only the first quarter of it get listened to, that would be just great, wouldn't it? What a waste of money. So we decided we'd break it up into 2 distinct albums, and it actually ended up working out very well that way, because we treated the writing sessions as though it was one big work, and when we divided it up, it ended up falling into almost material written in 2020 versus material written in 2021, which had distinct feelings behind them. It kind of ran the gamut of where our heads were at through this entire pandemic experience. So the first half being Null, which we're all experiencing now, which was more of a frenzied, furious, confused, crazed feeling, followed by 2021 was like a sense of melancholy and deep disappointment in everything and everyone.
Certainly so. I mean, you can really hear that, especially on the song A Love Letter. What can you tell me about that song in particular?
That one was actually one of the first ones that I started writing as a part of all of this. I taught myself how to use a digital audio workstation for the first time. Okay. After flirting with it in 2007. But the difference in those industries from 2007 to 2020 was so immense. Like back in 2007, setting up something like Pro Tools, I had to partition my computer,
Right.
And quite frankly, my home desktop didn't really have the computing power to deal with something like Pro Tools. And now in 2020, like obviously that industry has changed to make it more accessible to everyone. So I was able to run a workstation on my work laptop, plugging in a little MIDI adapter, and like I was kind of off to the races in surprisingly little time. Like there's obviously a learning curve, but the fact that we were in a global pandemic and no one could do anything they were used to doing, I had time. So I taught myself how to program MIDI. I taught myself how to rudimentarily, no, that was a mouthful, rudimentarily utilize this platform that I'd never messed with before. And I mean, I'd played around with things like Cool Edit Pro, which I think got bought by Adobe years later. So I had a basic knowledge of how to use like very bare bones recording software, but like never to this multi-track extent. So I dove in trying to write songs on my own on my computer. So that was A Love Letter was the first real big experiment where I probably rewrote that song like 4 or 5 times. Really? And we have the demos to show like it changed pretty drastically throughout the time that I worked on it. But it kind of acts as the example of how we started experimenting with this new platform and trying to utilize some new equipment that we hadn't used before, specifically synthesizers. And I really wanted to get really more wild than we had with saxophone before.
Which definitely comes through. I mean, when you have Kathryn in there now as well. Now she's now like a full-time member of the band, I take it, right? Yeah. We talked about that with the last record, but she was only on 3 tracks and only 2 of them were songs that we were playing live. So it didn't really make sense for us to bring a whole other person out on tour for only 2 songs. Right. So when I started playing around with synthesizers near the end of 2019, and especially as I really dove in on 2020, or in 2020 rather, we had the conversation with her if she'd be into playing like a bunch of different instruments and becoming a full touring member. And she was very much into the idea. So we kept that in mind. And as I kept developing songs, especially on this Null sequence of songs, we knew that we'd be able to actually play a lot of this live the way it was intended to be and the way it was written. So we've turned her job into a very entertaining one because she's jumping around from different synth patches to saxophone back to piano, and it's a right mess. Yeah, I mean, even just like checking out the video for A Love Letter, a very unsettling video, but in the performance clips, I mean, it definitely has that aspect to it. So it's very cool. Yeah, that probably is my favorite video that we've ever done at this point. Actually, all the videos for this album cycle, I'm very, very happy with. We got to collaborate with an old collaborator, Christopher Mills, but we also met a new friend in Tyler Funk from Winnipeg, who's a director of photography, and the work he put in on this, I think, is just absolutely spectacular. So hopefully this is a winning formula that we can keep working with. Do they all sort of maintain that sort of terrifying theme that the first one did? Oh yeah. We lean a lot more into focusing on the physicality of the live nature of our band too, and all these. So I don't know. I know people have different opinions on music videos, and for me, like, if it doesn't really feature the band and showing what they're about, I just have no use for it. So I'm very happy that we went in this direction. Yeah, man. Well, I mean, after 8 studio albums in, I mean, looking at Ken Mode, do you feel that Ken Mode has evolved as a musical entity? It certainly has. Yeah. I mean, comparing what we're doing now to our first record, Mongrel, like I feel a completely different band. We're still coming from the similar raw materials of what influenced us in the first place, but like in terms of being able to execute our vision and what our actual vision is, it's very different, although obviously in the same kind of subsect of the music world. I mean, thinking about it here, like 20 years on now, you've been working with your brother. How has it been, like, working 20 years with your brother all this time, and how have you been able to maintain that? It's really just a matter of relationship management. Yeah. I think, we're best friends. We run a company together, several companies together, if you include Ken Mode. Like,
it's just, I don't, there's no way this would have lasted as long as it has if it wasn't for my relationship with him. So, yeah, it's like second nature at this point. We've been playing together since we were teenagers. So, yeah. And I mean, before instruments, obviously playing together since he was born on my birthday, my second birthday.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts, man. That's like, what are the odds, right?
Yeah. Only accountants could do that.
Right, exactly. Now, you had mentioned previously, of course, the pandemic, really coming forth right with this new album. Obviously, for you, it affected you quite seriously, and that does, of course, come across with the new material. What is it exactly? What was it about? Was it the isolation factor? What was it that you struggled with the most during that time?
Specifically, like the hardest part for me is the way I've historically attempted to manage my mood and relationship with clinical depression is I use music, and also I'm very strict about exercise, and I practice Muay Thai and have been for 15 years.
Awesome.
And that's become a very big part of my life. And specifically, I'd really leaned into appreciating that community. And obviously when the pandemic hit, like live music stopped, all gym activity stopped, everything pretty much stopped. So I had all of my management mechanisms stripped away, and it's like, yeah, good luck trying to keep that in check. So a lot of this album, at least from a lyrical standpoint, was reflecting on how I was attempting to cope and the emotions I was going through. A lot of the music itself too was obviously a reaction to what was happening inside my own head, at least with the Null record, because a large part of that I wrote on my own in isolation, and with the exception of the Thai and Lost Grip, which Scott wrote with me. And then the Void record, it's funny because most of that is collaborative material that once we were starting to actually be able to play in the same room again, we started having Scott come from Saskatchewan back to Manitoba, and we'd write. And that was basically the only people we saw for like 2 years. Was hardly anyone from home, but Scott would come in from Saskatchewan to write riffs with us. It'll be interesting to see how people react to the second part coming out next year, simply because like they were coming from different places. So, yeah, and I mean, that is the fun part about writing music is getting to collaborate with people. Although there was an element of the work I put on Null in that it was almost like reflecting on the past and my roots of writing music on a 4-track recorder when I was in high school, with me playing all the parts. Right. It kind of reignited a bit of a fire there, I feel. Although I wish I could say that I'm continuing like flexing that muscle, but I've been too busy managing all the marketing stuff leading up to putting this record out that I haven't had any time. That, and like we're rehearsing again to try and get in shape so we can play shows, which we haven't had to do in 3 years.
Yeah, well, I guess not. I mean, are there plans for you guys to be hitting the road though in the near future then?
Yeah, next Friday we're playing Winnipeg, then we're playing Saskatoon, then Calgary, Edmonton, then we're taking just over 3 weeks off, and then we're doing 3 weeks in the US, and then Montreal and Toronto, and swooping back through the Midwest to get back to Winnipeg. So we're doing the thing the only way we know how. Smashing little rooms is the way to go.
It definitely is, bro. Now, just like you were talking about, going through the struggle, of course, and dealing with depression, do you have a particular band or artist that you turn to in difficult times like those?
I mean, not specifically. There's a lot of bands that have been with me since I was in high school, when I was starting to understand that something wasn't quite right in my head. Bands like the Melvins, Today Is the Day, Dazzling Killman, Drive Like Jehu, like they've always been with me. But specifically in 2020, like I kind of became obsessed with Nine Inch Nails. And I was never into them when I was a teenager, which it's strange that I got into that band in my 30s and that they'd then be so resounding as I approached my 40s. But that was really a huge influence on me in the early stages of the pandemic for some strange reason. And you know how that goes, where something just locks in at a time and place, and for some reason it's just that's just the thing for you. And that was the band for me, particularly when I was beginning writing in the early stages of the pandemic.
Now, was it the content in particular about Nine Inch Nails, or was it the electronic element, or was it the whole thing? What was it exactly that drove?
All the above. It was very much the whole thing.
Yeah.
The way a lot of his Trent Reznor's compositions are built, I just really did a deep dive on that. Obviously, like a lot of his lyrical themes revolve around depression and mental health reflection. So it very clearly could strike a chord with anyone during those early stages of the pandemic. So it's not like I'm unique by any means, nor do I feel like the content of the material that we put out, I don't feel like the feelings or emotions were unique in any way. And I mean, that's part of why we did this the way we did. And not that it matters whether or not our music even strikes a chord with people, because we don't do it for anyone but ourselves. Mm-hmm. But if people can get something out of it and can feel what we were feeling and relate to it, I hope it can help people in working out some of those feelings, because I know a lot of people were having them.
Certainly an en masse feeling of just dread and melancholy, like you were saying, I think with a lot of people. And I mean, some people turn to really, really bad ways of coping with that. I think that it's excellent the way you coped with it by creating another album and put it in this direction. I think it's rad, dude.
Yeah. I'm very thankful I had access to the tools that I had access to. And even just that I had the glimmers of hope that I was able to push myself toward to actually get something done, because I can acknowledge that so many people have it so much worse than I do and did, and just simply weren't able to get past those starting blocks. I know there's like memes all over the internet with musicians making fun of themselves about the whole plan to create that pandemic album, and how so many people nothing came to fruition.
Yeah.
And I feel very fortunate that I had this outlet to attempt to work through some of this shit. And
absolutely,
the fact that we got 2 records out of it is really cool. And I hope I can get some of the money back that I put into these goddamn things.
You know what? I'm sure you will, dude. It's from what I've heard so far, really, really strong stuff, dude. Awesome. Jesse, thanks so much, man. Really appreciate your time.
Killer. Thank you very much for having me. And I'm glad we could make this work.
All right. All the best.
Thanks a lot.
There he is. That's Jesse Matthewson from Ken Mode and the 8 studio LP. Once again, it's called Null. It's out now via Artoffact Records. It's definitely worth a listen. Definitely. I mean, I'm talking seriously heavy, seriously noisy, which is exactly what Ken Mode do, and they do it so well. But hey, my name is Scott Penfold. We're halfway through the podcast this week, and I'm now being joined by GOATWHORE drummer Zack Simmons. Now, GOATWHORE, they have the upcoming album Angels Hung from the Arches of Heaven, which is going to be dropping on October 7th via Metal Blade Records. Seriously dark, seriously heavy, straight up GOATWHORE. Zack, thanks for joining us on the Loaded Radio podcast this week, man. How you doing?
Doing well, thanks.
Great. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today, man. It really means a lot.
No problem, man. Likewise.
New album, Angels Hung from the Arches of Heaven. It's dropping October the 7th. I wanted to ask you about working with producer Jarrett Pritchard again. Why the decision to work with Jarrett again?
Basically, he was our longtime live sound man, so it just really made sense that we were very comfortable with him, and he really we're on the same page as basically he knows what we want out of our how to achieve our sound, and also translate it from what we like to do live, and then get it, and translate that into the studio. And so him engineering the record definitely helps. And then having a different set of ears with Kurt to mix just was a good process to have.
Definitely, man. Yeah. I was going to ask, you had Kurt Ballou come in there. I mean, he's worked with some stunning bands, dude. So is this your first time working with Kurt?
Yeah, it was actually. And, obviously we were fans of a lot of the work he's done with other bands. And we always kind of wondered, and we always really wanted to, we always had it in the back of our minds that we wanted to work with him eventually, So this time around, we got the chance to do it, and I thought it worked out great, man. And yeah, like I said too, it was good to have another set of ears after, because when Jarrett's, working with us in the studio for 5 weeks, and just kind of burnt on the material. Maybe it's good to have a fresh set of ears on it to mix. You know what I mean? So, and I thought Kurt did a great job, and really, he has his own way of doing things, but he's really good at getting the best, tailoring a band sound to them, you know what I mean? But
Sure.
also having his own style of the way he does things.
Now, first off, now, how would you describe the album yourself? Would you say it's similar to past GOATWHORE albums?
In terms of production and the sound, I think I'm the most happy with this one because it's we're always pushing in a direction and trying to improve on the last one,
Yeah.
So in the terms of the sound and the production and everything, I think it's very natural and live, but but warm, punchy, and just, I don't know. I think it ticks a lot of the boxes as far as what we were going for this time around.
Sure.
And the material too. I think it's been 5 years since our last record, so
Yeah.
it's part of the natural evolution in that time of. And having that much time to work on the tunes too, there's a natural evolution. And listening back to the material compared to some of the other releases, there's always a common thread between our sound and everything. But there are some new elements too, and some just maturing, evolving things within the songs.
Now, I also wanted to ask you as well about working with new bassist Robert Coleman. How's it working with him in the studio?
Oh, great, man. He's been with us touring for about 8 years now. So to finally get him on a record, it was, it's a no brainer. And he worked out great in the studio, nailed his parts down, and he's just great to work with. Great dude. Easy to be around. And yeah, it's just, it's good to, not that he wasn't an official member of the band, but having on a record, it's like, yeah, it's about time,
Yeah, definitely. I agree totally, man. It's some of the killer tracks I've heard off the album so far, man. It just rips, dude. I mean, the song Death From Above. What can you tell me about that song? Like how it came about? Man,
that was one of those songs that it's one of those that just kind of came together so quick. You know what I mean? It's like the process of it, some songs you kind of sit and rack your brain over and, have 12 different revisions and changes and stuff. But that one was just one of those just fell into place really easily. And it's pretty no frills, it's not like you don't have to think about it too hard. You know what I mean? But, it's a quick to the point, pretty simple, just ripping punky thrash tune, and it's one of those things that, I think we excel at, and we have a few of those on, every record pretty much, but it's definitely one of those that it's going to be really, really fun to play live. Definitely.
Oh, it certainly does. Certainly sounds like that kind of track too, man. Another great tune, man. The first one that I heard off the album, Born of Satan's Flesh.
That was one of the first, the first like completed songs I guess we had when we were writing the record. Mm-hmm. And then, when it comes to, we were putting together the, track order for the record. It's like having that after the short intro, having that as the first piece of music on the record. It's just like a punch in the face. It's one of the more the faster and more just chaotic tunes on the record. Totally, yeah. Kind of sets the tone, and especially that being the first song on the record, having there been 5 years since the last record, it was just like you come out swinging too, and we were playing that song live on our last tour that we just finished up a few weeks ago, and man, it went over really well. It's just an intense song and really fun to play live, and I'm looking forward to playing all these songs live, actually. So
the third song I've heard, which is the title track to the album, Angels Hung from the Arches of Heaven. Does that song have a story to it and how it came about or anything?
Yeah, I mean, I remember writing that one, and it's I guess one of the more kind of melodic songs on the record, if you want, if I can put it that way. But writing that one too, it fell into place pretty easy. It was like just a natural thing to write it. We didn't like second guess or question like, oh, is this main riff out of our comfort zone, or is it out of GOATWHORE's realm? And that question never came up. It just felt right. And then just the way it came together, and the kind of, it has a driving feel to it, but also this kind of melancholy, morose, almost like pretty vibe to it. I don't want to say pretty, but it's a unique song, and it definitely sticks out on the record too. And that's one thing I like about this collection of songs on the record, is that each song has its own personality, which when it comes to the record as a whole, it's still a cohesive unit of songs, but each song is different, and the whole album has kind of a ups and downs and twists and turns with it, it keeps it interesting for us and for the listener, I think.
Yeah, definitely, man. And I mean, just looking at some of the names of the tracks and also some of your past tracks as well, and some of your past works, where do you guys get the inspiration for the content of your songs? Obviously a lot of dark imagery there. But do you guys like sit around and like try and think up cool stuff, or is it more like it's something that flows naturally when you're in studio? Like, what is it?
Man, honestly, that's Ben, he's like a master of just coming up with these concepts, and then also, he reads a lot of occult books or philosophies, or dark literature, just any other thing, or even just something not even related to that. He can kind of adapt it and come up with a concept. And he's a really deep thinker, and he's really good at kind of coming up with a concept and a vision, and then just making it interesting, and not falling into the kind of cliche trap of, metal bands or satanic metal bands, just kind of barking the same things over and over again. Right. It's like, he's really good at making something interesting, which I respect about him.
Yeah, I mean, the imagery is it's really great. I mean, it really does create those images with the music as well. So I think that's a really cool thing about the band, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Just watching you like play, dude. I mean, you're insane behind the kit, bro. Like, and just watching and going through these sets. I mean, you must be wiped out after a live show.
Sometimes, it depends, but I guess especially at the end of a tour, you're pretty tired, but by then you're kind of conditioned for it, and I kind of learned too, even before a tour, even if a tour is not coming up, I'm pretty consistent about just staying fit, staying healthy, do cardio and lift weights and stuff, and just general, staying in shape helps with playing drums a whole lot. But and then before a show, obviously warming up and stretching. And
so do you have certain exercises that you do before you take the stage?
Oh, definitely, man. I got a little kind of a pre-show ritual, but obviously staying hydrated, that's important first and foremost on tour. But about an hour and a half before the show, start moving around, get the blood flowing, warming up on a practice pad, or and just stretching a little bit and getting the mind in the right zone. Sure. And obviously just not tiring yourself out during a warm-up, but just getting the blood flowing and the muscles fucking ready to rock.
Yeah, definitely, man. Just when you look at the classification of GOATWHORE as a band, I mean, you guys have been called death metal, extreme metal, black metal. I mean, are you down with the whole genre thing? And if so, like, what would you say this is what GOATWHORE is?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of different classifications, but personally, I just call it heavy metal. But if you want to, I don't know, I guess if you want to stick a couple extra tags on it, I would probably say black and death thrash, something like that. I don't know, but it's cool to me. We're able to cover a lot of ground because we have a wide array of influences, and we're kind of able to pack all those influences into a cohesive sound. It doesn't necessarily sound awkward if you bounce between that's a black metal riff going into like a skank beat grind part or punk part, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I don't know, I just call it heavy metal, man.
Yeah, straight up, dude.
Some people just want to overcomplicate it and say, but yeah, whatever. It's all good.
I wanted to ask you personally, as a drummer, are there any drummers right now in metal or even extreme metal that you are looking at right now thinking these guys are great?
Oh, all the time, man. I mean, one of the cool things about this genre, and then being able to tour with bands, whether that, a lot of them are obviously my friends and just people I respect anyways. But one of the cool things is just to see, amazing musicians, and tour with them and learn something from them. Every time I'm on tour, you can learn somebody or something by watching anybody. So I enjoy watching people, whoever it is, even if it's not in the same genre as me, just watching a different drummer, and you can learn something from everybody. But the thing about this genre especially is the level of talent and skill that people have to play this kind of music. So it's really inspiring and it pushes you to try to, to get better. And it's a inspiring thing, people's commitment and drive to push themselves in the genre and everything. Just a lot of commitment and strive for excellence within that. So it's really it's a cool thing.
Definitely, man. And going along the same vein, Zach, like what are some metal bands that you're listening to right now? Who are you digging right now?
Man, off the top of my head, death metal band from Portland called Vitriol. It's really, really intense death metal. It's really pissed off and angry.
Nice. Also
another band from Portland, totally different, but Unto Others, just a great kind of rock metal band and just really catchy tunes. And aside from that, it's obviously always Black Sabbath and Motorhead. Can't go wrong with that.
No, you can't, man. Definitely. Same way. Now, obviously, we go to where you got the album dropping October the 7th. I know you guys just wrapped up a tour. Are you guys going to be going back out on the road then?
Yeah, the next thing we officially have on the books, we're going back to Europe in January, February of next year. And I'm stoked for that because we haven't been to Europe, since before COVID. And
right.
We're going over there with our friends in Revocation, and they have an awesome record out too. Yeah. We toured with those dudes a bunch. We're good friends, so we're just stoked for that. And I think before the end of the year, we're going to nothing extensive in the US, but we're going to be doing a little something before the end of the year. But I think the cool thing is this record comes out October 7th, and then having just the time to let that marinate and people, fans kind of get acquainted with the songs before we really start touring on it. I think that'll be cool because, man, since April, we played 76 shows in the US.
Wow.
And so, it's burning. That was burning the U.S. pretty hard, So taking a little time to let the record fucking do its thing and then come back out, swing, and play all these new songs live. I think that'll be a good thing.
Yeah, I think seeing you guys in Revocation in one night would be fucking awesome, dude. That would just be a great night,
Yeah, it's going to be great. But dude, it's funny. I was joking with someone else. It's Revocation, us, Alluvial, which is Wes, his name's Wes Hawks. He's a wizard guitar player. Dave Davidson's a wizard guitar player, and then Sammy's a great guitar player, obviously. Yeah. And just having all those three together, it's gonna be like a guitar nerd. Like I can't wait to hear all the guitar nerd talk. It's gonna be hilarious.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, just being in that audience. I mean, there's gonna be some serious pits going on, dude. It's gonna be awesome.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be great. Yeah.
Awesome, Zach. Thanks again, dude. It's been great talking to you, man. And I can't wait to see you guys out there, man, on the road.
Hell yeah, man. Thank you for your time, man. Appreciate it.
Anytime, buddy. All the best. And hey, I can't wait to hear the new album, dude. I'm hyped.
Thanks, man. Hell yeah. Awesome.
Take care.
Later, man.
All right, there he is. And don't forget, Angels Hung from the Arches of Heaven, the new album from GOATWHORE, arrives on October 7th via Metal Blade Records. All right, but before we get on out of here, just want to remind you, though, to check out loadedradio.com for all your hard rock and metal news. It is updated constantly and daily. And as well, you can get all that access via the Loaded Radio app, which is completely free for you to download. Get it now, wherever you get your apps, or at loadedradio.com. We have past podcasts there, the 24-hour radio station, of course, there for you, too, and so much more stuff. Tons of great content of all things hard rock and heavy metal. Okay, so it's Scott Penfold here with you, and on behalf of myself and everybody else at Loaded Radio and loadedradio.com, we'll talk to you again next week right here for a brand new edition of the Loaded Radio podcast. We'll talk to you then.
Loaded Radio.